In the heart of West Dublin, where the streets are marked by the presence of gang activity and violence, two murders stand out as defining moments in the city's ongoing criminal conflict. The deaths of Chen Lynch and Whelan come to symbolize the brutal reality of the criminal underworld, where loyalty is fleeting and betrayal is a constant. Their stories are intertwined with the darker side of Dublin's criminal scene, a world ruled by drugs, guns, and vendettas, where no one is truly safe. The afternoon of May 3rd, 2019, began like any other for Chen Lynch. The 34-year-old was well known in the underworld of Dublin, a key figure in the vicious gang wars that had been escalating for years. His involvement in drug trafficking, arms dealing, and various violent altercations made him a notorious name, feared by many, yet also a figure of immense power in the city's criminal hierarchy. But on that fateful afternoon, as Lynch stepped out of his parents' house in Culminating, he would not return. It was just after 2 p.m., a quiet time in the neighborhood, when the calm was shattered by the unmistakable sound of gunfire. A white van had pulled up to the house, and without warning, masked gunmen opened fire on Lynch from a distance. The gunshots rang out in rapid succession, echoing through the quiet street. Chen Lynch fell to the ground as blood poured from his wounds. The gunmen fled the scene, speeding off in the van that was later found burned out in a nearby area. The details were chilling. Lynch had been executed, the attack carried out with precision, like a hit orchestrated by professionals. The gunmen were long gone by the time the police arrived, leaving behind only a sense of foreboding and the question, who had ordered his death? Lynch's murder was far from a random act of violence. It was the result of a long-running feud between rival gangs, each competing for control over Dublin's lucrative criminal enterprises. Culminating, Lynch's home turf, had become a hotbed for such conflict, and Lynch himself was a central figure in this deadly chess game. His rise to prominence had made him a target for those who wished to take his place at the top. The years leading up to Lynch's death were marked by an increasing tide of violence in Dublin. Gangs fought for dominance, and Lynch was right in the heart of this vicious struggle. His connections within the criminal underworld, including his ties to Mark Desmond, a notorious figure in the Culminating gang scene, made him both a valuable ally and a prime target for rival factions. Lynch's involvement in the violent turf wars had escalated steadily over time. He was known for his role in smuggling drugs across Dublin, often using young recruits to do the dangerous legwork for him. The constant threats and betrayals of the business took their toll on Lynch, but he continued to navigate this treacherous world, becoming more entrenched in its darkness. As tensions between gangs grew, Lynch's murder was a clear signal from his enemies that they were determined to take control, no matter the cost. His death was not a spur-of-the-moment act, but a carefully calculated move designed to destabilize his faction and send a message to anyone else in the game. But the killing would have far-reaching consequences that would ripple through Dublin's criminal underworld, touching the lives of many. While Lynch's rise to power was fueled by violence and ruthlessness, Whelan's story began in a different world. Born in the early 1980s, Whelan was originally involved in car thefts. In the 1990s, he became part of a small but notorious gang that specialized in high-performance car heists. The M50 gang, named after the Dublin motorway they used as their smuggling route, made a fortune stealing luxury vehicles. It was a dangerous but lucrative business, and Whelan's role as a master thief gave him an early taste of the crime world's darker temptations. Whelan's transition into the drug trade marked the beginning of his rise as a significant figure in the underworld. He moved from petty theft to smuggling ecstasy and amphetamines, eventually ascending to the much more profitable and dangerous world of wholesale cocaine trafficking. His growing network of contacts, both in Dublin and across Europe, made him a key player in the illicit drug trade. By the mid-2000s, Whelan had earned a reputation for his intelligence and ruthlessness. His ability to evade law enforcement and manipulate those around him allowed him to stay one step ahead, even as his empire grew. He was a master strategist, knowing when to move, when to lay low, and when to strike. His close connections with figures like David Lynch and Mark Desmond further solidified his standing in Dublin's criminal hierarchy. As Whelan's power expanded, so did his ambition. He began to pull the strings behind some of the largest drug shipments in Dublin. With his mind always calculating the next move, he built alliances with several influential and dangerous people, including some of the most feared criminals in Dublin. Whelan wasn't just a dealer, he was a mastermind, orchestrating complex operations and making sure that every detail was accounted for. But like all criminals, Whelan had enemies. His ability to climb the ranks of Dublin's criminal world came at a price. Those who once considered him a friend soon saw him as a rival, and some even began to fear him. His dealings with the infamous Mark Desmond in particular became a point of contention among other gangs. Desmond, known for his violent tendencies, played a crucial role in Whelan's ascent, but their alliance would eventually fracture. In 2016, Mark Desmond, a key figure in the Clondalkin gang, was killed in what appeared to be a targeted hit. The murder sent shockwaves through Dublin's criminal scene. Desmond had been one of the most powerful players in the Underworld, and his death was a blow to those who had worked alongside him, including Whelan. While some speculated that Whelan may have had a hand in Desmond's death, there was no concrete evidence to suggest he was directly involved. However, the fallout from Desmond's murder was severe. His associates, including Lynch, were thrust into a power vacuum, and rival gangs quickly seized the opportunity to advance. Desmond's death had serious ramifications. The power dynamic in Dublin's underworld shifted. While many of Desmond's allies were left scrambling, those close to him, like Whelan, found themselves increasingly vulnerable to attacks from rival factions seeking revenge or power. Whelan's position became precarious, and he soon found himself at odds with several people who had once been his allies. Whelan was not immune to the escalating violence. In 2017, he was the target of a murder attempt that nearly took his life. A group of masked men ambushed him in a public place, firing several shots at him as he tried to escape. Miraculously, Whelan survived the attempt on his life, though he sustained serious injuries. The assassination attempt left him with lasting scars, both physical and psychological. The bullet wounds would heal, but the betrayal he had experienced from people he trusted would stay with him. Whelan's survival only served to embolden him. He recovered in the months following the attack, and soon after, he was back in the game, running his operations from the shadows. However, as time went on, the cost of his criminal life began to weigh heavier on him. The reality that anyone in his circle could turn on him at any moment was a constant threat that loomed over him. On September 4th, 2019, Whelan's luck finally ran out. While he was on his way home, a hitman ambushed him in a quiet part of West Dublin. This time, the attack was brutal. Gunmen, operating from a white Volkswagen, opened fire on his car, hitting Whelan multiple times. He was rushed to the hospital, but his injuries were grave. Despite medical efforts, Whelan was once again close to death. This time, however, things were different. Unlike previous attacks, this was not a random act of violence. It was carefully planned and executed, orchestrated by someone within his circle, someone who had long been part of Whelan's inner network. Anthony Casserly, a trusted associate, had set the trap. His betrayal would prove to be Whelan's undoing. The investigation into Whelan's murder revealed a complex web of deceit. Casserly, who had worked with Whelan for years, was revealed to be the mastermind behind the hit. As authorities pieced together the evidence, it became clear that Casserly had been plotting for months. CCTV footage, Phone records and witness statements all pointed to Casserly's involvement, and soon the full extent of his treachery came to light. Casserly, trying to cover his tracks, attempted to flee the country, but law enforcement was relentless. His uncle, Christopher Moran, had also been involved in the murder, acting as the getaway driver. Both Casserly and Moran were arrested and brought to trial. The trial revealed the extent of the betrayal. Casserly had not only orchestrated the murder, but had also misled law enforcement at every turn in an attempt to cover his tracks. Whelan's murder marked the tragic and violent end of his life, but it also served as a stark reminder of the dangers that come with a life of crime. His association with Chen Lynch, Mark Desmond, and others who had fallen victim to the cycle of violence left a legacy of bloodshed in its wake. Whelan's story was one of ambition, betrayal, and ultimately, death. His rise to power, his strategic mind, and his ability to survive multiple assassination attempts only made his fall that much more devastating. As the sun sets over Dublin, the legacy of these two criminals, Chen Lynch and Whelan, remains ever present in the city's underworld. Their story serves as a grim warning to those who choose a life of crime. The price of betrayal is always high, and no one can ever truly escape the violence they help create. In the end, the cycle continues as Dublin's criminal world keeps turning, leaving behind a trail of lives lost too soon. That is it for today's video. Let us know in the comments section what you think of the life of Whelan, and I will see you on the next video.